Hello, my name's Jilly Ireland. I'm a professional midwifery advocate, or PMA, based in Poole in Dorset in the south of England. And I'm going to describe to you a small project that we ran from February last year to evaluate the effects of guided relaxation for staff. So this is the room that we repurposed as soon as we heard that COVID-19 was on UK soil. We set aside a room for staff information, training, well-being. It didn't look like this straight away. It came a few months later with some charitable funds that our chief residents did up the room beautifully, and it even smells nice in there. With these very comfortable bean bags for people to relax on, just to take some time out maybe when you feel a bit of a wobble or you need to speak to a PMA for some restorative supervision. We'd had a culture of supporting staff well-being for a long time before COVID, and during the first few months, we were really in a state of anticipation, waiting for the infection to spread from London down the motorway corridor to the south. So we had time to really think about what we were going to offer for staff. And as I say, we didn't start from a standing start. We had been offering guided relaxation on a weekly basis for a couple of years before COVID hit. And so staff, even if they hadn't been along themselves, they knew what it was. So that helped us just ramp it up to make it a bigger thing during COVID. I've been I trained in hypnotherapy when I was a student midwife. It's funny how the things you do 30 years previously affect your life in the present. But I just felt at that time when I was a student midwife, a real pull towards using language to help people help themselves relax. And now I'm doing it on a daily basis. I'm a hypnobirthing practitioner as well, which I'm sure helped. And I took some advice from a psychology lecturer in Bournemouth University. And it was her advice to use the phrases of Jon Kabat-Zinn from meditation, and to blend a bit of meditation, a bit of self-hypnosis in the sessions. And I dotted these phrases around the unit on people's lockers, in any staff areas. And these phrases would then act as, if I used them in the relaxation session, the hope is that when staff would read them again on their locker or during their break, that it would act as an anchor and a reminder of a time when they were able to relax themselves, and that would build their confidence in being able to control their emotions. And very much stressing that it's an autonomous act. It's an expression of your autonomy to take time out for yourself, just drop anchor from time to time, gather yourself, and then by the end of a day, you're more likely to be able to have a restful sleep and come back refreshed for the next day. And at that time, we were very much focusing on taking one day at a time. So you're taking care of your future by just taking care of the present moment. And no matter how overwhelmed or small you might feel, the little things that you do for each other are actually massive things. A cup of tea can mean so much to a tired colleague and is always welcome. Focusing on not being able to stop what's happening, but to be able to cope. And more recently, I've moved on to the lovely drawings from Charlie McKessie, which have been really kindly shared by him for us to use, all NHS staff to use, from the book The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse. And I've referenced that at the end if anyone likes the look of those pictures. So on going around the unit and gathering up people who could be released from the clinical areas and taking them to the nest, I would give them a chance to get comfortable. Then I would ask them to think about where they sit on this scale. It's called the subjective unit of tension scale. So I'd ask them to take a post-it note and think whether they're down near the 0, totally relaxed, or somewhere on that continuum up towards 10, 10 being the highest distress, fear, or anxiety that you've ever felt. And it would be quite unlikely that anyone would rank 10, because you would be unlikely to leave the house if you were as distressed as that. So expecting scores between, 1 and 9. So I'd ask them to make a note of that anonymously, just keep that by their side, and then expose them to the relaxation session of about 20 minutes. And then we ask them again to score themselves at the end. So these two pie charts show the scores before the guided relaxation and after. So beforehand, 121 people, most, just about 50%, were moderately tense. There was a group of 30% who had low tension, and 19% scoring high, 8 or 9. Nobody scored 10. And then afterwards, we lost one person from the data set. So just 120 doing an after score. And that's because one person, once she started feeling that sense of relaxation in her body, that induced a feeling of, a really strong feeling of how tense she had been at the beginning, which made her feel quite panicky. And she left and had support of another PMA. So this is why I prefer to do the guided relaxations in person, because then there's always somebody around to help if somebody has a panic response. It's rare, but you don't want anyone to be on their own. So in the immediately after, 97% of people scored themselves low, and the desired score would be 4 or less. 3% were still moderately tense, and less than 1% high. And it was up to the people in the room if they wanted to come and speak individually, if they scored over 4, and most people do. And we have a conversation like PMAs do, one-to-one, about what the action plan will be. It may be that an individual member of staff has had some CBT in the past, or perhaps has had help through their GP in the past, or they might like to go to occupational therapy, where we had set up a special team for during COVID. So again, just explaining the scores in words rather than pictures. Most scores improved. A few stayed the same, but nobody got worse. The lady who left didn't score afterwards, so her score is missing. 16 people dropped from very tense to normal, and as I explained, 2 people scored very tense at the end. The guided relaxation is not a therapy as such. A PMA is not expected. It's not a therapy role, but it was an exposure to something that you could do for yourself, maybe an exposure with people that you know, so that you might then be more likely to go on an app like Headspace and use an app that's been made free to NHS staff, just from having a little taster. There in the top left, that's an example of the scoring, and this graph just shows the improvements. These are the improvement scores before and after. So most people have scored significantly, have moved significantly in their scores before and after the relaxation session. Right. The message now is that people are tired, staff are grieving, not for people, loved ones who are lost, are worried about colleagues perhaps who are ill. We have been suffering more staff sickness and more exposure and fear of exposure in the hospital. Staff are shielding. And not only that, but people are grieving for the life that they don't have or haven't had over the past year. So it's a time to really remind individuals that we do need to look after ourselves. And having been able to exercise this, to roll out this project, is because we have a culture that recognizes that people cannot pour from an empty jug. You know, you need to maintain your staff, keep them aware of ways that they can reduce their stress, so that they can carry on being compassionate and fill up their jugs with all the resources and ways of helping one another. And exposure to one way of feeling that you're worth looking after, we may help people to access all sorts of things that help them feel better, not necessarily things that sound therapeutic. It could be gardening, craft, cooking, you know, the things that everybody is seems to be doing. And next, I'm preparing a case study for the World Health Organization of what we've done, and they've asked for feedback from the relaxation. So now I'm gathering comments from staff about how exposure to this technique has affected them. So there's something to look forward to at the end of the rainbow. Some things we've left behind, others we can look forward to enjoying. And this picture was taken by a colleague of mine outside our maternity hospital. And I think we realized that the pot of gold has always been there, and it's within us. We've supported one another. We've learned new things about ourselves. And that's only going to help us for the rest of our careers. So thank you very much for listening. The photograph there is from a previous presentation where I was talking about having our kind eyes and our listening ears on. And certainly when you take time to feel that you're worth the input of relaxation and other activities to fill up your pot, then you're much more able to have your kind eyes on and your listening ears. So I'm very grateful that I was able to roll out this program. And there are references at the end for the resources that I've spoken about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jilly, and lovely to see you.
Yeah.
I've seen you for a while, and it's great to see the quilt behind you as well, which is lovely to see. But thank you so much for what you've said, and it's wow. I mean, it's just so right, isn't it, that the fact there's so many people grieving in so many different ways and the tiredness which is being expressed out on social media from members of staff of all professional groups in the NHS are really experiencing this kind of thing. So just if you have any questions for Jilly, there is a chat box at the bottom, and you're welcome to type something in, and I will ask Jilly those questions. But as one of the things I was wondering about is you can't make staff come and use this resource. You can't make them use it. So have you had resistance to it from people? Have you had people saying, well, that's not for me, I'm not going to go anywhere near it?
Well, interestingly, when I asked people for their feedback comments, I would say at least half said there's no way I would have done this before. It just seemed far too earth motherish an alternative. But I think perhaps because we've been doing it for a couple of years, and it's sort of acceptable in the bricks of the building, I think they came along. There will be people who will never come, and that's that they'll find another way to de-stress. So yeah.
Well, you hope they will.
I hope so, yeah.
I mean, certainly the work of around resilience, wasn't it, is that people found different ways of de-stressing by taking their dogs for a walk or
indeed
drinking, which was a bit of a worry for me. But the fact that it's actually on site it's been something that, again, has been discussed for many years about how midwives need to have somewhere to let off steam, especially if, I mean, is it difficult after a 12-hour shift, for example, if people have had a 12-hour shift or 13-hour shift and they just want to go home, having that opportunity to de-stress before they go home is, do people do that? Do they use it?
I'm always very happy when I go in the morning and see indents in the bean bags, and I know that the night staff have had a proper break and have come over and used it. But I think you're right, it's something that hasn't been given enough attention. And the NHS 5-year forward plan is recognising that it's very important to look after staff. The staff are the most important resource of the NHS and any health service system.
I know some places are calling them wobble rooms, and there's been some comments about that. Can you say what you feel about using that term?
Well, we do have a wobble room on the main hospital side. I would like to think that the Nest is more. A wobble room doesn't sound preventative. It sounds like something you wait until you're wobbling before you go to. Yeah. Whereas I think you don't have to feel that you're suffering to come and speak to a PMA. It's a preventative and a positive thing as well. So I like our Nest.
Yes, so do I actually. and the fact that you've got such lovely furnishings and place of comfort is a good place to be, isn't it?
Yes.
And I also know, I don't think anyone's asking any other questions at this moment, so I'm sorry, I'm just sort of taking over here. But I know another thing that you have been involved in is around your choir. Would you like to talk about that as well?
Yeah. Well, we set up a workplace choir in 2012, and that is still going on Zoom. There's a Just Sing choir, which is a spin-off of the NHS ambassadors. The NHS ambassadors, midwifery ambassadors, recorded a version of Over the Rainbow for Christmas, and it was used to raise money for Best Beginnings. That was a very bonding experience because the ambassadors, most of us haven't actually met in person, but I can't remember that we haven't met. They feel like friends. You know, it's quite revelatory to me. I didn't think that was possible. But I suppose it's a bit like, you know, I had a pen friend when I was young. She was a friend. We could have lost that remote communication for a while, or I did, and now I value it again. So it's been good.
Brilliant. And if you haven't actually heard the song as well, please Google it. Please go and find it because it's just wonderful, and you can see Jilly on that as well.
Yeah, you'll find it under Carol of Hope, and Carol is spelt with 2 R's.
Yeah. And it's brilliant. And also I think probably Best Beginnings are still taking funding if anybody does want to sponsor part of that as well.
Or it's two, now I write it, it's 2 L's, not 2 R's. But Best Beginnings would be a good search term.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. Does anybody else want to ask anything in the chat box? Very quiet. You've stunned them into silence at the moment. I mean, the other interesting thing, isn't it, is about PMAs and how they have grown from supervisors of midwives going. And you're saying that you're just linking in with some members of other PMAs. Do you think there is a place for a kind of a national organisation or a way that PMAs can meet together to support each other in this role?
We do have groups run by the chief midwives of each region.
Right.
I think it can be a good thing that the PMA role is interpreted according to local need, but because it's not statutory, you're relying on the particular culture that you're in. You're relying on them valuing the role of the PMA. I think I'd prefer that it was statutory to have a full-time PMA in each trust. It took me a good few months to really get my head around the AirQuit model, and had it been just a sessional post, it would have taken me, you know, maybe a year, and then maybe you've lost momentum by then. So it is a local decision, but it's my opinion that it's good to have someone in the full-time role with as many sessional PMAs as you can afford to train. It's a good skills to have.
Well, we have got some questions that have appeared now. And Chrissy M, hello Chrissy. We're lucky to have a space in our hospital for the Nest. Do you have advice on how this could be achieved when this is not available? So when there isn't space, do you think there's ways that staff can find ways to do this?
I think, hi Chrissy. Chrissy's from Poole. I think that physical space is important. I have tried running when we've not been able to meet in the Nest. I have tried running the sessions on Teams, and it's just not the same. You need to be able to walk away from your clinical area and go somewhere else, I think, to really relax. We're in the process of building a new maternity hospital. I think we need to press very strongly for staff break areas and areas to go and relax in.
And presumably this is something that you will pass on to the World Health Organization, and yes, to say that it is an important aspect of it that you can share with them.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's another question. It's from Joanne O'Hare. Not sure if that's the right way of spelling it, but hello, Joanne. Thank you so much for that. I missed the start, so you might have covered this already, but how was the Nest and the PMA funded?
The Nest was funded from, it was an existing room, which was a training room, and the dressing of the room, all the extra bits of equipment were provided through charitable funds given to the Poole Hospital charity. So various local organisations, and the Captain Tom money as well went towards that. Funding of the PMA role is at the discretion of the trust board, whether they fund it as a job or not.
And to follow on from that, Vicky Ames has just said, I'm a PMA and find it very difficult to get staff away from clinical duties. Have you got any advice?
Certainly in the last few weeks, I haven't been able to at all. So it's been more appropriate that I am just visible clinically, and, you know, even if it's just making a bed with someone, it can be, you know, a touch point. Sometimes I've done sort of mini relaxations in a birthing room. You just snatch the time when you can. Yes, it's a challenge, isn't it?
Yes, it is very, very much a challenge for everybody at the moment, and it's wonderful to see the work that you are doing to help staff at this time, and I'm sure that there'll be more coming from you. I'm looking forward to hearing more about research and stories that you have from your practice area, because sharing with everyone.
Just as an extra, sorry, to that answer is, if we can instill in the culture that each person is worthy of that time, they're more likely to come and approach us.
Yeah.
And accept our invitations. And that comes from the top, I think.
Yeah. Yes, and it's also encouraging from other members of the staff saying, why don't you go over and have a bit of space, isn't it? People recognizing that actually we all need to get a break at some point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jilly, I could talk to you for hours, as you know, and it's been lovely to speak to you, but I'm afraid we're going to have to sort of draw this to a close now. Are you willing for people to contact you if they want to find out more and see what, maybe even come down to Poole when we're all allowed out to see what you're doing?
Yeah.
Okay, well, do take that on board, everyone, and do feel that you can contact Jilly to speak to her. But thank you so much, Jilly, and it's great to see your quilt, which is from the year of the nurse and midwife. I know what that's all about, so it's wonderful to see that. Is it complete now? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic to see. So thank you very much for your time. And
Thank you.
what I need to do now is to move on to speak to Jean Carriher, who is here with us.